Welcome to the show about all things making music, from the creative process and workflow to gear and recording techniques. I'm your host, Brian Funk, musician, producer, Ableton certified trainer, and author of the 5-Minute Music Producer. Let's learn to become better music makers. Welcome to the Music Production Podcast. Today I'm speaking with Nick McLaren, the Chief Strategy Officer for Serato. Nick talked about his experiences as a DJ and how it led him to become a Serato user. We discussed Serato's new multi-effects plugin, Hex FX. Nick also spoke about the technological developments that have changed DJing and the challenges that lie ahead as tech gets more and more powerful. Please welcome Nick McLaren to the Music Production Podcast. February 21st through 23rd, 2025, I'm taking over Ableton's Pasadena headquarters to host a very special in-person music making workshop, and you're invited. It's the Finish February workshop retreat, and it's open to just 15 people. We're going to spend 3 days bringing your songs from ideas to completion. I'm going to help you finish your music using the techniques and strategies I've learned in my 3 decades of music making and the skills I've discovered speaking with music professionals on nearly 400 episodes of the Music Production Podcast. You'll participate in lessons, activities, and exercises I've developed over my nearly 20 years of teaching experience and 11 years as an Ableton certified trainer teaching music production for Berkeley Online. You're going to get personalized one-on-one feedback and constructive advice from me and the other workshop attendees, and we'll meet and learn in small group and individual settings to ensure you get specific feedback and help with your music throughout the entire process. You're going to have the time and support to work on your music so you can leave with finished tracks. Plus, you'll be hanging out at the Ableton Pasadena, California headquarters and have access to Ableton's Push 3 and Move to make music with. And you can take advantage of Ableton's exclusive in-person 20% off hardware and software offers and up to 30% off Push 3 when you trade in your old Push. I'm also going to give you a physical copy of my book, The 5-Minute Music Producer, and a collection of my premium Ableton Live packs. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm very excited, and we're going to get a lot of work done. Space is extremely limited to ensure high-quality, personalized attention. Learn more and sign up at brianfunk.com/workshop, and I'll see you in February. What's up, Nick? Great to have you here, man.
Hey, Brian. Yeah, cool. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, it's good to talk to you. Serato has been a big name in the landscape for a long time. I think 25 years now, right?
Yeah, just celebrating the 25-year anniversary this year. So exciting,
Yeah.
big moment for us.
It's kind of weird to think that the year 2000, or I guess even, is it 1999?
Yeah, it'd be 99. Yeah.
That's 25 years ago. Just blows my mind. Time just flies by.
Time flies, and it starts going faster the older you get, I think. But yeah, that was pitching time back in 99, basically. So,
Have you been with the company the whole time?
No, I haven't. No, I've been with the company I'm going to say almost 17 years.
Yeah.
So a pretty good chunk of that time, but wasn't there for the very early days.
Right. So like the adult life of the company.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So you're the Chief Strategy Officer. What does that entail? What kind of work are you doing? What's the day-to-day like?
Yeah, it's a pretty, I guess it sounds like a big title, doesn't it? But ultimately, I think, my role is thinking about what do we do next? And then what are we doing day to day in the product? So it sort of encompasses like the product management function. So I look after the product owners and things, the data, the insights teams, and then like the design and UX of things. But really it's thinking about what are we doing and how can we do things better and what should we do next? So yeah, it's a fun role, and we're very much like a product-led or have been a product-led company. So my background very much is more on the product side rather than thinking about everything super commercially. If I know obviously they go and they work in tandem, but ultimately it's like how do we make really cool products for artists? Is really if the elevator pitch or the one-liner, it's like what cool stuff should we make?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's a tall order. I think maybe a lot of people have this idea that, you should just make this, make that, but so much goes into just making it a reality, making it something that's useful and that works. I know a lot of the things I think I want sometimes would probably never work in reality. So getting those things ironed out must be quite a challenge.
Yeah, and look, it can be. I think the hardest part about the job is there are like a million great ideas, right? But how do you like separate? There's like, billions of good ideas, a million great ideas, and then how do you find out those real like killer, excellent, or beyond great ideas from the heap and prioritize those? And often you talk to people and like, why aren't you doing this or why aren't you doing that? And I think, yeah, that's the hardest thing. It's not because we don't want to. It's like resources are finite and you have to focus on the ultimate, like the very best of the best. And that's often the hardest thing is like figuring out what that is. And you got to figure that out before you even go to market. So,
right.
Yeah.
You can get a taste of that if anyone's ever been in a beta forum or some kind of testing of a product where they're taking suggestions. If every suggestion was taken, you just have this bloated, complicated, confusing, product or software or whatever it is. How do you guys make those decisions? Because like you said, there's probably a lot of really great suggestions, but in practicality, you just can't do everything.
Right. Yeah. And look, it's often through very heavy debates, and I wouldn't say they get heated as in, aggressive debates, but we have like really good debates about, what types of customers should we be serving? What kind of artists do we think will use this? It doesn't always necessarily need to be the mass either, right? Like we don't necessarily, when we develop a feature, we acknowledge that it might be quite niche for a group of people, but actually, if they love it, then that's like a great success for us. So, look, it's there's not like really a formula that we use. It's it can be fluid in how we think about things, but ultimately, it's like we want to make cool stuff so people make music or they play with music in interesting ways and hopefully change how they're interacting with things. So, and often you don't know until the product's been out and people are using it. If you know, so it is. Yeah, it's probably one of the harder things about the job is figuring out, who to target, what to do, and that sort of thing. And often you'll find like people that use it in ways you never even anticipated, or there's all kinds of weird things. So it's a fun job and it keeps you on your toes.
I can imagine. I love those stories of products that are designed for one thing maybe, and then they come out and they get reused or changed up. I think one of the more famous musical examples is the Roland 303 for bass lines. It was, from what I understand, really designed for kind of musicians to have an accompaniment with. But then electronic music producers created like these cool acid bass lines that maybe even if you heard in isolation, you'd be like, what is that like laser noise that's going on? But then it birthed a whole entire genre of music.
Yeah, that was the beginning of the 808 as well, if I'm not wrong. It was basically an accompaniment, drum module for organ players and things to play along to. So it is crazy how these products. And I think when it came out, if I'm not wrong, the 808 wasn't super successful, but it was actually many years later that it was adopted, by hip hop and like techno and electronic producers, and suddenly it was like, okay, totally different market, but it found its success in like a weird other little part of the world that was not intended to. I'm sure the product managers and marketers and things, when they launched those like modules out of Roland, were not planning that at all. So yeah, it's fun. It's fun. That's what I love about working in the music biz is, you make things and you see it pop up, in places you never expected. That's a really cool thing, I think, as well. Serato's based in New Zealand. Like, I don't know if everyone knows where New Zealand is, but it's on the other side of the world. We're right down, 3.5 hours on a plane from Australia. So we're really far away. It's at least 3 hours to get to any other country, let alone the US, which is a good 12-hour flight to the West Coast. And so, we make stuff down in New Zealand, and then, I'll be looking on Instagram or something, and it'll be like, oh my God, like my hero artist from my childhood is using this product that we made down the road in New Zealand. And it still blows my mind that you see these little like things happen that would, in some ways, not unintentional. It's always the dream, but when it happens, it just blows you away.
Yeah, I can only imagine to see that when it's so local for you like that, and you're just going to work, right? You're doing your thing, making stuff that you think is cool, and then next thing you know, and Serato's been big in just I think the whole culture, really, DJ culture, and bringing that to the forefront. It's just exploded. The grandeur of the shows, and a buddy of mine was just sending me videos from I forget exactly what show it is right now. Big festival, the stage with mushrooms and all kinds of crazy lights. That's just gotta have been pretty cool for you to just watch this kind of the EDM and DJ culture just blow up in the time you've been with the company.
Yeah. It's been a wild journey. I think, excuse me, before I joined Serato, I was, more or less a working DJ producer in New Zealand, and so, I was doing little things, but trying to, DJing was my thing, and I have all these heroes and all these people that, I had their records, in my crates or their posters on my wall, or like the flyers I would pick up from the local store, and then to go on and then over the years to have those people, not only use our product, but when you meet them, they're almost like, oh, hey man, thanks for what you do, and you're like, what do you mean? Thank you for what you do. And so it's this really weird sort of mutual respect, which is amazing. But yeah, to be able to make products for those sort of artists and heroes and things still was really humbling and blows me away.
I'm an Ableton Live user. That's my kind of thing, and I found there was a lot of action going on in New Zealand and Australia, and for me, I really didn't come across a lot of stuff that was happening in my world or in other interests I had, but with music, there just seems to be something going on there. Lots of people were coming out of it, lots of companies, lots of just very forward-thinking stuff that I guess there's something going on. I've never been, so I can't speak to it, but there seems to be something kind of like in the air going on in that area.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I think there's, certainly speaking about New Zealand, we've got our indigenous population, the Maori people, really, really musical, really like heavy, musical sort of vibes that translates through to like the school system. And, you learn, this kind of like classic songs that are taught through school. We have huge Polynesian communities coming from like, Samoa and Tonga and, all those communities are also really, really musical. And it sort of all, maybe blends together and just, I don't know, my upbringing felt very, very musical, even unintentionally. My mum, learned the guitar. She could play songs. She was a primary school teacher. We all learnt things at school. I don't know if that's part of it, or maybe it's just one of those serendipitous things where, you can't explain it. But there's definitely like strong local sort of musical influence, I think, throughout the New Zealand population.
Yeah, it's really cool. So you were DJing on your own, working when you were you using Serato at that time, or?
No. So when I first started, showing my age, obviously Serato was not a thing. And so I started relatively young, DJing. I sort of picked up some turntables. I was working at a bike shop of all things. And maybe we can come back to that story because it's an interesting influence for me. But I was working at a bike shop, and one of the guys there, was a DJ. Often this is almost like basically pre-internet, right? So you couldn't like jump on, the internet and find out about things. And he was like, you should get into DJing, man. It's really fun. You've got a good ear for music. And convinced me over like the summer when I was working my summer job I bought a turntable because that's what I could afford, and a mixer, and so I had one mixer, one turntable in the beginning, and then borrowed my parents' turntable that was, had no pitch control. So I would use that and sort of try and mix back to back, with one turntable with a pitch control, the other one was just static. Anyway, that was my first foray. So very simple mixer, one turntable, and then started just buying records. So that's how I started DJing. Serato wasn't a thing. Computers were kind of still, I don't know what it was like in the US at the time, but like we had desktops, but laptops were certainly not anywhere near as ubiquitous as they are now. My first computer was a desktop that I had to like really shop around to figure out, will this run a Pro Tools system? So this was, sort of the pre-Serato age. And then, so that would have been like late 90s. And then in the early 2000s, I was playing some club gigs, but again, it was all records. And then a friend of mine was like, "Hey, have you heard about this Serato thing that these guys are making locally?" And, I was like, sounded interesting. But again, it was a very radical world. I was like, yeah, they're doing this thing where you can play back MP3s on your computer using like basically your standard system, and it uses a control tone. And yeah, again, showing, I guess that 20-year gap now in technology. But that was like, what? That didn't make any sense. But they were, they're developing it locally in Auckland. And then my friend got a hold of like a very early copy, and they'd actually given him like a loaner laptop to go with it, because again, no DJs had laptops. And so they couldn't just give out beta versions to people. They had to give like the laptop along with it, just like, hey, here's the system. This is how it might work. The original Serato Rainbox, the great thing about it was you could plug it into any existing DJ setup. But you had to have the laptop. So anyway, he had the Serato system around at his house, and we started playing with it. And I was like, wow, this is incredible. But, the problem back then is we didn't have music. Like all of our music was on vinyl. It was just kind of, there was CDs. It was the kind of the Napster, beginning of like that era.
Yeah.
But there was still this challenge of, how do I get music onto my computer? So it was, it was cool, but there was almost like that barrier then. But slowly, like locally, we started using it. And I think like I was probably one of the first local DJs to adopt it, for club gigs. And it wasn't an overnight thing. It was very much one of those, do I trust this? You start off, you still take your Creator Records to the club, and you bring your laptop, and you play mostly the records, and you play a few songs off the laptop to ease into it. Over time, you sort of use the laptop more and more, but you're still taking half a crate. And then finally, I think after a year or so, you're like, okay, I'm going to be the Serato laptop guy now.
Going for it.
Yeah. And that's obviously when, at the same time, the sort of the availability of music and things through the Apple iTunes store was starting to take off. So it was one of those times and periods of time where I think the DJ side of things was sort of developing, but also like you had the consumer side of things was also developing around availability of music, format shifting, from CDs to downloads and things. And so it was all sort of happening in tandem that made it, right place, right time.
Yeah, there was a couple things really came together at the same time for us there. Computers being portable like that. And I mean, I can remember too, when we were first as a rock bands in high school trying to put our music on the internet, you got like the worst quality, and it was just a short clip. I mean, I can't imagine that anybody was drawn to our music hearing that, knowing what that stuff sounded like. I'd love to know what the bit rate was for that. It has to be like just so low. But it was like that period of, where are we going to go for it? And the same thing happened with me with recording, where finally, I don't think it was till like 2005 that I got a laptop and was like, I'm going for it. I'd seen friends using Pro Tools, and I'm going to leave behind all this other stuff. Exciting time, but.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so on the recording side, equally, it was sort of things were developing very quickly. I remember when I started making music, it was with an MPC 2000, and I had managed to get a hold of a Korg Triton as well, and had it all like routed with sort of old school, just regular MIDI cables, and had it all synced up. But then the computer thing was happening. I was like, we need to start recording this. But I think, again, this is going off memory. I think Pro Tools at the time was not really available to anyone except for the very high-end HD stuff. But they just launched the M-Box. I don't know if so the original
I
M-Box
had the
was
M-Box
like basically
too. That's what I bought.
So like their consumer solution. And I remember like, pulling a whole lot of money together and buying like a Pro Tools system so I could record all this stuff off my MPC and actually start working on music properly. And that was wild too. I remember back then, like the very early days, like that first Pro Tools M-Box kit actually came with an Ableton Live demo CD as well. Yeah. It was like, when it was like really Ableton Live is like, this is a different thing.
Yeah, I didn't understand what the heck it was. It looked kind
Yeah,
of like a
right.
spreadsheet, and I thought it was only DJing software actually, and I've never did that before. So I was like, I don't this weird thing. I don't even know Pro Tools yet. So,
Yeah,
but it's funny to, you know, little did I know, like that would
yeah,
become
exactly.
the way
Yeah,
I went with it. But that was a huge innovation. You know, we forget that small interface. You know, I think the closest you could get was like those Digi O2s, double O2s kind of, but those were giant rack things. A friend of mine had one and he had it in this huge thing he had to cart around to record it.
yeah,
It was
exactly.
just,
And yeah, not only huge, but also like very expensive.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was, at the risk of this turning into a couple of old guys talking podcast, it was like the hoops you had to jump through back then to like record and get music out compared to now. It's just come so far, isn't it?
Mm.
It's amazing for just how quick you can just iterate and play with stuff and get music out now compared to back then. It was it was hard. It was a lot, and I'm sure the generation before then felt it was even harder. So yeah,
Yeah.
we've come a long way.
But at the time, I remember thinking this is great. You know, oh my God, like I can't believe it. Coming from like a 4-track cassette recorder to then I got these ADAT ADATs, Alesis ADAT machines. I'm trying to think of the name.
Yeah,
That's what they with the VCR tapes. And that was like, oh my God, this is crazy. I mean, they were already old by then. And just every single step, although now looking back feels really primitive, it felt like, wow, things are getting really cool now. And so it's been fun to be on that adventure. And I am really glad I know what it was like to some degree anyway, to struggle and how lucky we are now to just call things up in a plug-in or on your laptop and just boom, here we go.
yeah, 100%. Yeah,
Do
I've
you still DJ now?
yeah, I do. Oh, well, put it this way, I still play around like at home, at work, for like small friends, kind of things. I I don't like I haven't like DJed in a club in a little while, to be honest. I love DJing. I've got 4 kids. Getting
They'll keep you out of the
going
club.
and playing a gig at 2 a.m.
Yep.
And then coming home and having kids jump on your head at 6 a.m. Means that DJing is not like the highest priority for me at the moment in terms of like club gigs. I still love it and I like the idea of it. And I think I'll return to that once the kids get a little bit older. But right now, between the day job, when I get free time, I love making music, making beats and things, recording music and playing around with DJ stuff. But yeah, I don't need to be going to the club at 2 a.m. at the moment.
Yeah, I don't really have that desire either. I don't have kids either, but just, after a while, I guess.
Yeah.
I think that's a really cool thing. And I've seen this with a lot of music tech companies that it comes from actual musicians and people that were doing it, that were using it. And a lot of that passion is put into the products. And this seems no different, that it's got that kind of, it was made by us, for us kind of feeling to it.
Yeah, and I think, I've noticed that too. I think that's how the Ableton guys started, right? That was, I think it's a pretty common theme, especially amongst the ones that have stayed around and be successful because, ultimately, economies go up and down and priorities change. But I think if the end goal is still to make great tools for, our peers and idols, then that really keeps you focused on what the mission is. It applies even to how we hire for like the product team. So all the guys and girls that work in the product team at Serato, for the most part, have been like working DJs or working producers at some point in their lives, and so it just helps understand the space. I think you can teach product management skills and things to these people, but it's really hard to teach the nuances of like DJing and music production and like even like the passion. You can't teach passion I think,
Yeah.
you know, and so if you've got an underlying passion for making and using this stuff, it really helps become like, you know, great product people. So yeah, I think that's probably why, you know, I think it keeps you focused on what is the mission, what we're trying to do. Yeah.
Well, a lot of other industries wind up with people making big decisions for the company or the organization, or in my case, it's education, where, you know, they don't know what it's like on the ground floor, what's actually going on. And sometimes things sound really good in your head, but when you put it into practice, it's just not how things work.
Yeah, exactly.
That perspective is really important. I think that's probably why a lot of the companies, like you mentioned, that have stuck around are for those reasons. They're built on that passion, and the people that are making important decisions understand the ramifications of those choices.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, like I said, that's something we're always thinking about that, and we're always using it. And I think that's the big thing is, you know, in some ways we're lucky working in an industry where there is a lot of passionate people. I think it's probably harder to hire passionate accounting, you know, users to make accounting software, maybe. But I think when you're playing in the music space, or, you know, in a creative field or something where there's like a real hobby, like a passion behind it, I think it's, finding those people that live and breathe it really helps make cool stuff. And, you know, you can do all the user research and all this stuff on the side, of course, because you want to find out. You don't want to make things just for yourself all the time. But it's also a very nice, like, frame of reference to come back to if things become difficult, where you need to make quick pivots or quick decisions. If you've got this underlying, like, DNA, it's like a passion for music and the products, and I think it really helps.
Yeah, it comes through. I mean, I teach high school English as a day job, and a lot of the things I come across software-wise, you try to use it, and you're like, this person has never taught in the classroom. You know, whoever made this doesn't understand what it's like to have to read 30 answers or something like that, or how to input grades or make comments. Just you get it comes through when you're using this stuff. So that's a cool thing. So you guys got some fun stuff coming up with the 25th anniversary and all. Do you want to talk about the new thing that will be released by the time this episode is going live?
Oh yeah, so the new plugin. Yeah, we're good to talk about that, right? Because it'll be out and in the wild. Yeah, so we're launching. We have launched a new Serato plugin called Hex FX, and so it's, I guess, at a very high level, it's a multi-effects plugin filled with a ton of really fun effects that you can chain together. It's got a macro knob that you can control various things all at once, so it's not just a wet and dry. And I think from memory, I should have the notes in front of me, but it's got a few hundred presets. And of course, you can make your own and make, just really go wild with it. I should have a better sales spiel for it, but obviously I'm the product guy. So I think ultimately we tried to make something that, and it comes across, I think, in a lot of our Serato products, that on the surface is very simple. And so, you've got one nice big sort of macro control that controls, 6 different effects that you can chop and change. But you can go deeper, and there's, you can flip it around and, unveil the parameters and go deep and have a lot of fun with it. So I'm kind of like more of a preset guy. Like I just cycle through, there's a couple of hundred presets that are really fun to use, but you can make, like I said, you can make your own, you can make new combinations, edit, and so on. So yeah, super excited about that. It's our third plugin if you count Pitch in Time. So if you think the roots of Serato, when we're counting this 25-year anniversary, is like Pitch in Time for Pro Tools was the thing that the company was founded on. We subsequently went into DJ and made our name probably, in a more famous way in DJing, but in the last few years gone back to music production. So we launched Serato Sample, Serato Studio as our sort of standalone DAW, and then Hex FX, which is our new thing.
And it's really cool. I've had some time with it to mess around, and like you said, this ability to be really simple, but also go deep, I personally appreciate a lot. I mean, I love being able to turn the knobs and get in there and figure out how I want to dial in, like what the frequency on my bit crush is and all this kind of very minutiae stuff. But when I'm in the creative mindset, when I'm just trying to make and create and flow, I love just having simple broad strokes like that. The big macro that is turning maybe like 17 different controls at once. But it just allows you to operate with that plugin in those two very different mindsets. And that's, for me, I'm always struggling with the jump between the two. The creation part and that kind of like play aspect. And then you have to get a little more serious and edit and fix things. So that transition time, I find, is it's very difficult to keep going through back and forth. So if it's a tool that I really want to use, but I have to get too technical, that can pull me out of that creative flow. And I really do appreciate that you've got almost, I think it's just like a button on the side that exposes all the deeper controls, or you can just hide them away and tuck them away and just, I'll turn the big knob, get going and have fun.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's that transition time, I think, you talked about where you're going from, you're in the zone, that creative moment that's often hard to recapture, moving into like there when you need to dial things in or maybe get the actual idea down on paper. And that's, yes, like I say, something that Hex does really well. It was actually the motivation for Serato Sample in the beginning. I know that we're here to, talk about Hex, but I think it's important to touch on, with Serato Sample, the actual motivation for that was we were looking at how different people, but, DJs, sample-based producers and so on were making music. And, certainly myself, we saw a bunch of guys in New York doing it where they would actually use Serato. They put a record, they'd be having like a soul sample or something inside Serato. They'd be drumming on the cue points and like recording that into Pro Tools or doing something kind of funny, and or later trying to recreate that on an MPC or trying to recreate that in Ableton, that sort of spontaneous moment they had with their DJ software. And like, there's something here with, we could just make a simple plugin that almost, it's not for DJs, so to speak, but it mimics that DJ style of sampling, where you're throwing a sample in, you've got a bunch of trigger points, cue points, you play with them, you do something, that's really quite, spontaneous, and you've been able to capture that. And so that was the motivation behind, Sample initially. And that's sort of, I guess, our philosophy or how we think about all of our things, which comes through into like Hex FX as well, with those two sort of zones where let me be spontaneous, let me play, with the big knob in the moment. and then, but then later on, if you've got parameters or other things you want to tweak, you're able to do that.
That's pretty cool that you're able to watch people do that and kind of figure out like, hey, what would make your life easier? So there's a lot of observation, I guess, that goes on when you're trying to come up with these ideas for new products and problems
for sure.
you're trying to solve.
And I think that comes down to, again, like the, not just me, I'm going to talk about me, a lot of the company, and it goes back to that previous conversation. Like, I work at Serato, but also when I turn off the last meeting of the day, I'm probably going to go into the living room and put on a music production video on YouTube, or I'm going to, I kind of, without as corny as it sounds, we're living and breathing what we're doing, and so it's like you're not really clocking off at the end of the day. I'm making music in the evening. I'm watching people on Instagram use music production stuff. I'm watching DJs on YouTube. I guess it's just, we're just absorbing without really thinking about it. You're always doing research and you're absorbing and you're living the culture. And I think that really, helps make good products and, helps you come up with these things, like you say, those ideas, those observations. It's like, oh, there's something there. There's something there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's, I just read this book, actually listened to it, and it was nice to listen to. It's John Cleese. like from Monty Python and all
that
that,
John
you know?
Cleese. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So it was about creativity. I'm forgetting the name of it. It's something with creativity in the title. It's new and it's really short, about an hour and change. And he talks so much about that kind of stuff of how like what he likes to do is write at night and kind of get stuck and then come back to it the next day in the morning. And he talks a lot about the way we're just constantly absorbing things and the unconscious is working and figuring things out for us. That I found really fascinating because a lot of times the kind of breakthrough moments happen when I'm just maybe like in that twilight between sleep and wakefulness, or maybe taking a shower or doing something where I'm not completely there. But almost like what you're saying, like you're done, you clocked off, but now on your leisure time, you're doing this or that. And that there's something that goes on with the mind, I think, that it's working, whether you're actively forcing it to or not.
And I mean, yeah, you know how it is once you get into music production, it doesn't ruin music, but it changes how you enjoy music, right?
Yeah.
So you don't just go and listen to the new so-and-so album. You listen to it and you're like, oh, interesting choice for that clap. Or you're like, oh, you're like, oh, okay, the mix on this one, yeah, just like, oh, the mix on it's a bit weird, but it's okay. So you just constantly, everything you do in terms of interacting with music, it changes it. And you still, you're 100% you enjoy it, but you're just thinking about it in a much more of a, I don't know, it's like active enjoyment or something. I don't know what the term would be, but yeah.
Those different dimensions of enjoyment.
Yeah.
It happened to me, I remember vividly when I started playing guitar, and I was 14, and unlike you, I wasn't really exposed to a lot of music and playing. Well, I heard music, of course, but I wasn't playing it. I wasn't around musicians. So it really wasn't something I ever thought I could do. Like, I just didn't consider it until a friend of mine was playing guitar. And it's like, oh, well, if you could do that, we do all the same bonehead things. So it was really kind of shocking in a way. It was such a surprise that could be something that I pursue. And then all of a sudden, all the music I heard had guitars. I'm like, oh, there's the guitar. There's the acoustic, the bass. And it just opened up. And the same exact thing happened with music production when I started recording. And you start saying like, oh, like, listen to how different it sounds when I'm, this far from the microphone compared to when I'm on the other side of the room. And then you hear that in recordings, and you never really go back. I don't know if, I obviously like where I am, but sometimes I do kind of wish I had a little taste of that. Just, I don't know what it is. It's just music, and I'm either like it or I don't.
Yeah, no, exactly right. Personally, I've been having a lot of fun with it. I think we wanted to make a multi-effects plugin that sort of, was really well-rounded. There's obviously, there's a lot of fun plugins out there. But we felt like there was one, there was a gap where there was something missing where, you could have fun with it. It was like really well-rounded. So if you wanted to do like breakers and sort of pitch rolls and those sort of like DJ style effects, have that, but why not also have like an amazing reverb in there, or like model some old, bit crushers and have like those sort of classic drum machine sounds in there, and really make a nice, well-rounded plugin. The initial goal for it, like the internal kind of goal, was like, let's make it like the first thing you want to reach for after you've played like with a sample or played a synth or something. And I know that's quite broad, but it's like, how do we make this really well-rounded thing where I've got my beat, I've got my sample, it sounds a bit boring, I need to bring it to life. Let me throw Hex FX on the drums, the sample, and the bass. I'll use a different preset for each, and then hopefully it starts to come alive. And I think we've been able to do that really well.
Yeah, I could see that, because there's a nice variety of stuff. So you don't have to construct your chain as much. Like you said, you can go into the presets and they're kind of nicely organized by styles and kind of the job they do. But you're not required to constantly recreate that. It reminds me on some level of this. I don't know if you can see it actually. Maybe right here. This Chroma console pedal by Hologram,
Okay.
and it's a guitar pedal, but they use it on everything in their videos, and you can put it on anything. I have it just wired right into my interface now because I love it so much. Because it has like 4 stages of effects and some variety in each stage, but it's so fast, like it just transforms everything. Like you said, like if I plug my guitar in direct to it, it comes out on the other end like distorted with delay, with all kinds of weird stuff going on, that I'm inspired, and I'm like, okay, fun. Like now it makes me want to play this, and the sound coming out really informs the playing. So with Hex, it's nice that you can dial things in and just be like on a different planet with just a couple quick turns, and not having to say like, okay, so I got this, like now it's compressed, now it's distorted, now it's a reverb. It's just, nope, let's just travel to the planet directly instead of all the steps along the way.
Yeah,
Keeps
exactly.
you moving.
That's right. And I think, again, going back to that, that previous convo we had around, if you could unlearn some of the things you know about music production. One of the things I do like about Hex is you can throw a preset on that kind of doesn't make sense. And it, in some ways, like it wouldn't be something you naturally would chain up yourself with different VSTs. But you throw Hex on it and you're like, I'm going to try this, I don't know, let's call it like some sort of one of the spacey presets where we'll have like a halftime, a reverb, and maybe like a bit crusher in some weird order. And it just, like, you don't have to think about it, but it's made the sound weird and it almost doesn't even seem like it should make sense, but it's done something cool. You're like, cool, okay, I would have never have played with that individually, but actually as a fun preset or a chain within one plugin, it's really fun.
Yeah, that's a cool feature because there's certain things like you learn not to do, right? Like put your distortion before your reverb. That's sort of the proper way to do it. And as you learn that, that's just what you do. You fall on these defaults. But when I first started playing guitar, I didn't know that. And I had some pedals and I was just putting them together. I didn't even understand that they would affect each other, depending on what order it was. So I think I did a lot of weird things that were kind of cool that you kind of unlearn, or you learn yourself out of those like creative moments. So it's nice to have something that just allows you to go there, to find yourself in those places that maybe, if you were reading the textbook, would be no-nos. Oh, you can't do that. You're going to have too much noise. It's going to do. But that's so often where my inspiration pops in, where I'm like, ooh, that was cool. Like, yeah, I'm not supposed to do that, but this is fun.
Yeah, I think, that what you described is almost a perfect kind of, I guess, arc, or how my own music production has evolved as well. I think I started off not really knowing what to do, and you made some really fun kind of happy accidents and mistakes that ended up being, really, really interesting. And then you start to learn a bit more and you're like, oh, I shouldn't have done this. And it starts to get it, I know I'm going to call it my mid-era of production was a lot of it. I listen back and it's like trying to be a bit clean or a bit perfect, almost editing out my imperfections. And more recently, again, I'm like, there's like something nice about the happy accidents and the mistakes that happen in music, and like leaving them in and learning to really enjoy them and be comfortable. So that's something I think, I don't know if it comes with time or experience or just throwing the rule book out, but really loving, just kind of making weird stuff that doesn't, shouldn't make sense.
Well, when you're first starting, it comes out kind of weird because you don't know what you're doing. So you're just, you're really making mistakes. And then you realize what you're supposed to do, and it's learning, I guess. And like you said, often things get neater and cleaner and more organized. And I guess once you start understanding the rules, you understand how to break them. But sometimes you forget that you can break those rules.
Yeah.
You forget that, oh, yeah, I can do that. I watched a video. It was Sarah Bell Reed, who I had on the show about a year ago. And when I saw one of her videos where she was doing, what is the term now? No input mixing. or something like that. Anyway, I'll have to look it up. I'll put the link in the show notes, but she's just taking like the output of the mixer and plugging it back into the input and plugging that and just doing all the stuff like you've learned not to do because you blew out your speakers one day or something, but in this controlled like headphone environment where you like she's understands I better keep the volume real low when I do this because I'm going to create a big feedback loop. But it was really kind of just like, oh man, like, yeah, like I've got all these jacks on this mixer that I can start really messing with. And just everything's kind of like that, where we can, it's the way software works too, where everything, it's so easy to do that stuff, to route things that you can find yourself doing weird stuff. If you can think to do it, it's hard to unthink or unlearn or push the learning aside a little bit sometimes to get there. So having tools that kind of nudge you in that direction are a lot of fun. But things too, like whether it's like kind of hiding the macros or even just being a little more abstract about what things are called, is instead of like the filter being, I'm cutting the highs at 2K, just call it like dull or like, blanket over your head or something, like, so that you get those kind of images that I think also spawn new ideas and spark some creativity along the way.
Yeah. And so hopefully we can, spark some of that with Hex.
Have you, do you have, like, how long have you guys been working on that? Let me start there.
Yeah, a little while. So, hopefully I'm not giving away too much internal information. So we started off, so Serato DJ for a long time, we used Isotope FX inside in DJ. And then we had to update all of our platforms, but, specifically Serato DJ for the new like silicon chips for Apple. And
was a major hurdle for everybody.
Yeah, it was a real pain. And the Isotope FX technology that we licensed many, many years ago, they were no longer supporting it. And so we effectively had to rebuild all of our effects to replace the really great sounding Isotope effects for DJ. So that was sort of the beginning of the project. It's like, well, we need to build all this effects IP ourselves. Let's build it for DJ. But why not turn that into a really fun plugin? Like that could be our next plugin as well. Sort of, you often look at like, what can we do next? But if there's things that we can utilize in multiple different parts of the business, then why not? So the very like beginning of the project started off as like replacing the effects in DJ. We've obviously subsequently like worked more and more on the Hex side of things to build out all the presets and gone a little bit crazier, stuff that you wouldn't necessarily want or need in DJ software, but built that into the plugin side. So I didn't really answer your question about how long it took. Yeah, I'm going to say, if you include the DJ thing, couple of years, but I don't, I'm not really probably the best person to ask about exactly how long. Yeah.
Well, I have to imagine that was kind of like an oh shit moment. Well, we can't work with this stuff anymore. The chips are changing and now what we have doesn't work. I would bet that felt very much like a setback. And I mean, I'm just assuming this, but then it's really cool that you were able to turn that into something that's ultimately like a lot cooler in a lot of ways, that like now you got your own thing to work with and now you've got this ability to take it where you want. And like Isotope makes great stuff. I love their stuff, but to have now your own where you can really get to it. I just love when things like that happen, where unexpected things like, like we're not gonna be able to do that anymore. Now what? And then it just opens all kinds of doors if you're, willing to look at it that way, I suppose.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so having that technology now in our sort of, as all of our own IP means, we can use it for Hex FX and, potentially other things. So yeah, like you say, it was a good oh shit moment that we turned into something great.
Yeah, sometimes you just got to be forced into that in life and music and all these things, like you might not necessarily want to take the leap on your own, but sometimes if you just get pushed off the ledge a little, you kind of learn to fly, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's exciting stuff. It's I guess really like a turning point too, that you guys are kind of going in. I'm sure you're going to reach all kinds of new customers and people that get interested in the products. And for me, in my way, like, like I said, I was never a DJ. But, talking to you and using Hex a bit, and then what you said about sampler, I was like, oh, that's actually kind of interesting. For me, a lot of the live performance stuff I do with my music does have a lot of DJ elements to it. So it was a lot of fun to bring that into what I do. So hearing about the way the sample works, it's interesting. It's like,
you should have a play. It's it's a very fast way of like chopping samples in sort of unexpected ways. So you can throw a any old sample in there, and we have like a find samples button that does a little bit of magic. It's not using any like super crazy AI or anything. It's just looking for different parts of the song that are either lacking or have transients, and so it will set effectively in some ways random number of triggers or cue points across the song. And so it lets you, and then immediately, if you have them, on a keyboard or on a pad controller plugged in, you've immediately got these chopping points that you wouldn't have necessarily gone and set yourself. And so, but you start playing with them in a rhythm, or you start, chopping them. You're like, oh, okay, there's a loop there that I would never have picked. It's almost like goes back to the old days of like, needle dropping through a record and thinking about, at the moment, right. Maybe a lot of kids, they'll sample soul, but they'll be sampling off YouTube. But back in my day, we go to the record store and you'd find some random dollar store, dollar records, and needle drop through and like, oh, there's a bit there.
Right.
And so trying to recreate that, I guess, for the modern world of like, let's throw in a sample, but let's give you some strange bits or some bits you wouldn't have picked, and then go from there. And then, you can favorite those certain cue points, those triggers, and then you can roll the dice again, find samples again, and then keep refreshing until you've got a big set of, pads that you want to play with. So it's really fun. Yeah. Still a really fun way to make sample-based music.
Yeah. Well, I bet you could do that with any audio, right?
That's what, when I say sample, of course, any audio. So, right. A drum break, some random guitar loops you've got, anything like that. And that's been one, I talked early on about one of those products that you never know where they're going to end up. Initially we made it not for DJs, but with that DJ workflow in the back of our heads. But that's had some really like humbling, amazing success with like, people like Timbaland picking it up, and, Metro Boomin and all these kind of like really, obviously very, very well-known, legendary producers using Serato sample as like their sampler of choice now. So really, awesome.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, I love to play my guitar sometimes, or some synths or something, and then just kind of randomly loop parts. It might really just be with like the loop brace and live and just move it around. And that's been the start of songs sometimes, where what I played has nothing to do with it, other than it was, just some random section that just happened to loop well. So I could see it being a lot of fun, just putting some instrumental parts, even stuff you come up with on your own, and just seeing, what happens. Where do we get anything kind of weird and interesting? Maybe it's like the 3, 4, and the 1 and 2 looped in a kind of a weird inversed way.
It's definitely fun to play with. It's got the pitch and time stretching shifting in there as well, so you can key change time stretch, and it sounds really, really good. And then if you are using full songs, it's got stems separation built in as well, so you can just drop down to the bass or the drums or the instruments or whatever. And so that, in combination with the random chopping, gives you some really interesting kind of accidents that makes it fun. And then you throw Hex on the end of it with a crazy preset, and you've got
there you go,
a really good, random accident machine.
Hmm. It's so amazing. And it's just stem separation. It's one of these technologies I never thought was going to be possible. I used to tell students, they'd want to know, how do I get just the drums out or just the vocals? I'm like, it's like trying to get the butter out of the cake after you baked it.
Right.
But like now you can, and it's a wild time to be making music.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. So many amazing tools to use, and that's not even touching on like the next wave of generative stuff and all that world that's coming.
I'm really hoping that it brings back a little bit of a more human playfulness. You mentioned before about like our imperfections. I do think that's a lot of what makes music interesting and makes it more expressive. And I've found myself, when I first got my Pro Tools and I was able to quantize everything and put it right on the grid, finally I'm in time and like everything's going to be great. And I was like, what's going on? Something's off here. And it was a shock to the system to realize like, oh, it's kind of nice when it's not perfect. Maybe not as imperfect as I was doing it before, but there's something in there. So I do hope that we'll find cool ways to integrate some of these new technologies, but also use it to keep our humanity. That's
yeah. As do I, and I think I'm pretty hopeful about that in terms of I'm going to say most people making music at the moment, they're not making it for huge financial gain. They're making it because it's really fun to experiment with things, experiment with noises. You get a fun result at the end, but often it's about the journey. And I think with a lot of these, the newer ways of, the one-click make a song things, the output's reasonable, right? Like can sound good and it's not going to get any worse. But you're missing out on the journey and the fun.
Yeah.
And it's, they don't give me any creative satisfaction. And that's effectively the reason I make music, right? So,
right.
Like you say, I'm hopeful that the humanity will, for the most part, stick around because we enjoy making music. It's what we do. What else am I going to do?
Right. Yeah, that's exactly what we enjoy, making music, not, I don't know, just having it. There's something nice about going through it, the whole journey, the mental challenges, which there are endless. It's a puzzle that keeps evolving and changing, and the more you learn, the more complex it gets. So I don't think that's going to go away. I'm not too worried about that because I think, okay, I can one click and make a country song that sounds really good and, maybe even better than what I could make on my own, because I'm sure that day's coming. But it's still, it takes the fun part out of the whole thing. It's like, I don't know, what else? Riding a roller coaster, but I'm just going to get online and then I'll be at the end of the roller coaster. You know what I mean? Like the fun part is being on it. So.
Yeah, the fun part is hating it along the way.
Yeah, the thrill of it, right? If I'm going to fall out or something. But I don't want to just start at the beginning of the line and then just bloop, I'm out at the end. I did it.
Yeah. No,
it's not a great analogy, but...
No, I know exactly what you mean. It sort of does bring about like interesting, debates, I think, around, I think over the last, let's say, 10 years at least, there's been a drive to make, music, I'm going to say, very accessible to people. One, from a, an economic point of view, like make it cheap, but also from a, a usability point of view, right? Like let's make it so anyone can make music. Let's make it easier.
Right.
And I think, and that is obviously like a spectrum. I think you've got, very, very old school drum machines over here, maybe with no manual that you just have to figure out. And then you've got like a one click, make a country song with these lyrics over here. And I think for companies like ours and a lot of companies in the industry, it's like figuring out where that line is. So, you make it too easy, people are just going to go away and like there's going to be no mastery. There's no excitement, there's no learning, you might as well just use a one-click AI song generator. But if you make it too difficult, then you're sort of in this, I guess, old school club of, music production has to be like earned, and there's sort of like, you know what I mean? Like it's a little bit snobby, and it's like
you got to spend 15 years mastering an instrument.
Right. You're not allowed to DJ in the club unless you've got like a room full of records type argument, right?
Right.
Because that we saw all that come about with Serato. It's like you had to earn Serato. You're not allowed to just get a laptop and music. That was like the early days of digital DJing. And so I think, there's an interesting debate that I think is here already. It's like, where is the line, and how does that sort of move over time around, keeping mastery, and like we're saying, the journey is the fun bit, and like often mastering stuff is like that's the really fun part of the journey. When you climb the mountain, it's like the actual the climb to the top was horrible, but it's like you achieved something. And so
much different.
Thinking
than
about
just
like from a tools perspective, just thinking about it from a tools,
But like you're saying, that's a really interesting consideration these days, because we do want that. We want fast results. We want to be able to do interesting things, and we want things that were time consuming to not be as time consuming as they once were. But where is that line where, because if you take that to the end, then just click the button and you got your song. Where do you back? That's got to be I guess that's going to be more and more of a challenge as the time goes on.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's something that we're thinking about, obviously. And sort of I hate to go back to it, but like, the ethos behind something like Sample or Hex, where it's like, it's fun, but it's also powerful. And, so, excuse me. Like having it so people feel like they're in control and they're making something original and is theirs, and they've mastered it and they've figured out some new thing that no one else has figured out yet. I think it's like, let's retain that, but then also make it, easy enough, but not so easy I can write, I don't know, press one click. Because I think a market for that stuff does exist. Don't get me wrong. I think,
sure.
If you want some elevator music or some music you don't care about for your, I don't know, your blog content or something, they already have like song libraries for that kind of stuff, right? So I think that market exists, or there's something there for that. But in terms of like creating music as an outlet and for fun and for, I don't know, the reason we do it, there's a line somewhere that is evolving, and I don't know where it is yet.
Yeah, we're gonna find out, I guess, right? But there is like that kind of feeling where if it is too easy, too fast, it almost doesn't count, or it's not satisfying. It doesn't feel good. It's not you. I wonder where that's gonna wind up, because I can really clearly see how some of the arguments of yesterday were kind of silly. Like, why do I have to? If I want to just make some music and experience that feeling, like the 25 years of mastering the instrument and the music theory, that can be broken down a little bit to let more people in. It's still going to help you though in this process, right? It's still very useful to have all that stuff. But if you turn the dial too much, then it just doesn't even matter.
Yeah. But I guess, again, if people have a creative moment with these tools, then maybe that's also okay. There's just maybe different. It's different. Yeah, I'm not.
It's different. Like maybe if I want to make like a silly song for my friend's birthday and have it come out of the computer real quick, almost like sending a meme to somebody.
Right. And that's that can be pretty funny.
Yeah. You can get a laugh out of that. I don't think there's as much creative satisfaction maybe, but if you're not a musician, if you're not into that, if that's not important to you like it is to us, then I could see that. But that's a cool it's a cool place we're at.
It really is. And we might find that like any of these kind of, what we'd call like top of the funnel sort of things where people might start experimenting with that stuff as one-click, one-click song makers. And for every 100 people that play with them, maybe a handful of those people actually go on to like, actually, I want to figure out how to make this a bit more mine and play with those tools more and break it down and, remix the thing that I made. And maybe that's their foray or their entry into music production is actually through those means. It's a bit like how, DJs, for example, nowadays a lot of DJs, they sort of start off as like really good, like Spotify playlist creators. They're just really, they've got a good taste in music. They don't own any music, but they're really good at making playlists. And then the next evolution from there is to just then sort of entertain their friends or, start to play those songs out to people. It's a very different world to, you had to collect and buy every single record and keep it in your bedroom and learn the base, learn the foundations. But that's still like a great way to get into DJing. And maybe we'll see the same with some of these tools where it's like, it's a sort of an entry point, and at the same time you've got the people over here making music with drum machines and walls of analog synths that I don't know how to operate. You've got people that enter the market with these one-click solutions that are kind of funny, and they want to then push that more and make it more their own. So yeah, it's cool. Yeah,
there's an experience in there, right? It got me thinking about a couple things I've done recently. My wife and I went to a cooking class where we made fresh mozzarella cheese, and you could just buy it at the store, and that's fine. But it was a lot of fun going through the experience and learning about it. It enhanced I think we learned some things about cooking. Showed me how to hold a knife properly, which I couldn't believe I didn't know how to do for like all the vegetables I've chopped in my life. But that sort of thing, going through the process was really neat. I don't want to do it every time personally, but if I was the kind of person that might have been more prone to wanting to learn that stuff, that would have been the way in, and I think that's great. And I've always felt that way. Maybe there's a fraction of myself that had to practice his scales on his guitar. That is, a little bit of that old man, yelling about the new generation. But I think all in all, it's a win that the like playing field has been leveled, or like it's been democratized a little bit. Like I think it's really cool that you can take like a kid, and instead of sitting them in front of sheet music with like some instrument that they don't relate to, give them like something like a pad controller, and they're making a beat that sounds like the songs they like to listen to. Or even if they're just on BandLab, taking loops and putting them together, and then they start getting excited, and that's the spark that starts that fire for them that might not otherwise have been lit.
Exactly, yeah. And they might start off with pre-made loops, and then they're like, I'm going to figure out how to make my own loops to make it a bit more, a bit more personal. Or they might not. They might just want to combine more and more loops, and they have some success that way. But hey, if they're having fun,
there's
cool.
Still some creativity to that.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's awesome. I'm very happy you guys are into that and thinking about that. It's a really interesting 21st century problem to be thinking about, right? I think for so long, technology has been making things easier and easier, and now we're almost like, wait a minute, it doesn't need to get that easy. Like we need to still keep the fun of the process in it, and what an interesting thing to have to look out for.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, and like I say, there's the danger of being too kind of, the old man yells at clouds. Back in my day, it had to be done this way.
I know.
And then there's the extreme, the tech bro. Who cares about the process if you can make the best song ever with one click? And so, that's like I say, it's a fun, very 21st century problem to be dealing with.
Wow, such a weird species, right? We've gotten so far. But you guys are doing awesome stuff. Congratulations on 25 years and your new device, Hex, which people can get through, I guess, Serato.com, right?
Yep, Serato.com.
Find it there. So It's cool. I like it a lot. If anyone knows the kind of stuff I like, it's got a lot of interesting things that will give you a lot of character to your music. Those are the things I like the best these days that make it have a feel and a vibe. And I don't need really like another compressor or EQ necessarily, unless, who knows, there might be some technology that comes out. But I like the stuff that kind of inspires me in that way. So Hex is doing it for me. It's really cool.
Cool. I'm glad you like it. We had a lot of fun making it and having a lot of fun playing with it personally as well. So I'm glad to, it's always nice to be able to, yeah. Always nice to be able to share your ideas with the world. So looking forward to having, everyone can grab it now. So don't have to keep it secret.
Right. Very good. Well, thanks for taking the time to talk.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Pleasure. And yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Music Production Podcast. If you want to help support the show, the best thing you can do is tell a friend, someone you think that would enjoy the show. I'd also love it if you could leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to support my work, you can go to brianfunk.com. I've got tons of Ableton Live packs, tutorials, samples. You can check out my book, The 5-Minute Music Producer, which gives you 365 short music-making activities to help you get started, stay inspired, and finish more music. And there's also the Music Production Club, where you get my latest releases as soon as they're finished. It gives you access to a community of like-minded people who are making music and sharing ideas. You can share your music, find new collaborators, and participate in our live meetings where we set up some kind of musical challenge and then make music together and share our results at the end. That's the Music Production Club. It's a lot of fun, and you can find that and everything that I do at brianfunk.com. Thanks again for listening to the show, and have a great day.